This story is for your listening pleasure. If you like, please subscribe. I will try to produce one story a week. Creative comments are welcome. If you like, please see my Patreon page. Monster Hunter John. Story 5, A Different Flavor. Memories of the Bluegrass State had followed me all the way home. Hotels were okay, but after a while, well, as Dorothy had said, there's no place like home. After a nice night and breakfast, I headed into Amari only to find it nearly empty and in some disarray. I thought I would have a greeting from Kent and tell my story, but as I found out, he was gone. Nancy came out of office immediately upon seeing me and had me sit in her office. Kent and Larry have been missing for 2 days, she started. We found Kent's car abandoned in a parking lot. No clues in the car. From what we can tell, Kent and Larry went out to investigate some houses of possible vampires. That was the last we heard of them. What did you find out about the houses? I asked. Knowing Kent, he had to have a list or notes about what was going on. You need to see Bob, she said. He's in charge and can tell you far more than me. She dialed a number on her telephone and waited. Bob? John's here. He wants to see you. Okay. She then turned to me. He'll meet you in the hallway. Good to have you back. Thanks, I said as I rose and stepped out into the hall. I saw a man standing down the hallway waiting. Bob was tall and thin, dressed with a navy-colored dress pants and light blue button shirt. His short brown hair turning gray at the temples. Obviously a no-nonsense type person. He waited for me to come to him, and he ushered me into his office. Finally get to meet the famous John, he said, offering his hand. Shame about Kentucky. 3 agents. That's a tough loss for them. I paused. 3? You mean 2, don't you? Bob sat down in a chair and offered me to sit. No, 3. Tasha Griffin was killed late yesterday. What? I was flabbergasted. What happened? I just saw her yesterday around noon. According to our initial report, she died in an explosion. Apparently, she used way too much dynamite when she blew the crystal cavern you two discovered. It seems that she and Ricky Murphy were involved with each other, and she wanted revenge a bit more than suspected. Not an accident then? I asked, seeing Tasha's image in my mind. None. 6 sticks of dynamite when one would do, nor did she run when she lit it and tossed it into the hole. I nodded. Her attitude wasn't great, but it certainly didn't deserve her death. I was silent for long moments thinking about the whole affair. Now, to what we have going on here, Bob started. We have been looking into reports of a vampire or vampires for a little longer than a week. Ken had a list of about a dozen suspect houses. He and Larry went out to check on some of the places 2 days ago. We found their car abandoned in a grocery store parking lot. No sign of either Kent or Larry. We went over their car with a fine-tooth comb and found nothing. So, whoever drove it used gloves and were very careful. What about the houses they were checking on? We have the list, but we don't know which ones they were checking on. We have agents staked out at 4 right now. 4. Only 4 out of a dozen. That's 12 people. They take 8-hour shifts. That's over half of the people that we have. It takes time. Takes time, I said, standing up. We have 2 people missing, vampires possible, and all you can say is that it takes time? Settle down, John. He said, even we have to follow the law. We can't go in like stormtroopers, kicking down doors and searching houses. I fell silent. He was right. I sat back down. Okay. Have we cleared any of these houses as not being it? Bob nodded. Yes. 5 are family homes with kids. That leaves 7. Hopefully we can clear 4 more today. What are you looking for to count as clear? mainly what the house is being used for. Who goes in and out when the people use it? Where the people go when they leave. If there's anything that doesn't look right, that house gets a mark. Once we go through all the houses, we go back to the ones not cleared and recheck. That's how we do things legally, John. Bob shook his head. Like I said, it takes time. You don't have to like it, but it's the best we can do. I sat there silently for a minute. Finally, I made a decision. What can I do? Stake out a house. Bob smiled. It would help, he said as he turned to his computer. He did some quick typing and then pulled out a notepad and wrote something down. He tore off the sheet and handed it across. Here's on the houses we are checking. Stop by Minute Mart, get some snacks and a drink or two, then go set up and watch as long as you can. I smiled slightly and stood up. Will do, I said as I grabbed a sheet of paper. I did as Bob suggested, got some energy drinks, a bag of chips, and some beef jerky, and then headed out. It was about 10 when I pulled across the street from a modest 2-story house. Yard was trimmed, car in the drive, nothing unusual. I set up to wait, and it didn't take long. A woman and small girl came out of the house and moved to the car. The lady wore denim shorts, t-shirt. The girl was about 8 years, I'd guess. Jeans, pink t-shirt with a ponytail, almost dancing to the car. The two looked like a happy family. They loaded up in the car and drove off. I watched the car go down the street and turn. Gone. I decided to take the chance that there wasn't some kind of home security system. I got out and looked around the house. From what I could see, it was just a normal family residence. A couple of toys in the backyard, an outdoor grill, even a small swimming pool. I went back to my car and wrote in a small notepad everything that I had seen. Another hour or so had passed, and the car came back. The woman got out and opened the back door, the girl joining her. They carried out some groceries and carried them into the house. Again, everything looked normal. Time went by until almost 6. Another car pulled in. A man dressed in dress pants, buttoned shirt, and tie got out and went in. I waited for about a half hour and then decided to sneak out again. There was a light in 2 rooms, so I crept over to a window. The man was now dressed in a t-shirt and was sitting at a dinner table. The girl sat on one side. The woman left what I could guess was the kitchen, bringing food and setting on the table before sitting down herself. The 3 held hands and said a prayer before starting to eat a pizza. A pizza. No blood, no raw meat, just a pizza. That was enough for me. This was a clean house. Small family, nothing going on. I quickly went back to my car, wrote down what I saw, and called the office. Nancy and Bob were gone for the day, but I left a message. I drove home that night, feeling like I did what I could, but this would now be day 3 of Kent and Larry missing. I didn't really know Larry that much. Hell, I didn't really know Kent all that well either. I just know that they were 2 agents that I liked and who were missing and possible dead, or at least in great danger. Who knows what could have happened in 3 days' time? I did not sleep well that night. Thoughts of how Rebecca had tried to have me for dinner, what Kent was possibly going through. It was a shame that the old vampire legends are not true. A cross or a bundle of garlic right now would work wonders. I headed for HQ early. Neither Bob nor Nancy were there yet. I went to my office and called up what the MRE had of vampires to refresh my memory. Vampires were sensitive to silver and sunlight, had to either eat raw meat or blood, were stronger, faster, and more agile than normal humans. I thought of Rebecca. She was certainly stronger than normal and took some doing to actually kill her. I shivered at the memory. Vampires also used willing humans as blood donors, and they were fanatically loyal to their vampire masters. So, what were we looking for, vampires or donors? Finally, Bob walked in. The 4 houses yesterday checked out, plus the one that you looked at. That leaves 3 houses. If they all check out, I'm lost for what to do. Of the remaining houses, can we look at property records, taxes, that type of thing, to see if there is anything irregular? Bob sat down. We did, but it really means nothing. Donors can have regular jobs and families, just going somewhere else to give their blood. Vampires can have regular jobs as well, even have people living with them, as you well know. So even a good background check is not going to show anything unusual. Just thought I would ask. So, the 3 remaining houses have nothing unusual that might tip us off. One house is a rental. Other than that, not really. A rental? Who is the renter and the landlord? I'd have to look that up, Bob said as he got up, but I don't think it's anything. Well, let's find out, I said as I followed him out and walked to his office. It took a few minutes on his computer, but he finally came up with the answer. Renter's name is Clark Taylor. He is apparently a purchaser for Philip Black, who is the owner of Black Exports, dealing with the import and export of antiques and rare artifacts. Black Exports is on the 20th floor of the Jameson building. Bob paused as he read the computer, and he typed in a few things. Seems that Black Exports has been in business since 1939, owned by Philip Black since the beginning. Not a Philip Black and Philip Black Jr.? No, he said as continued to type. IRS records indicate tax payments from 1939 to the present. No mention of a transfer or a son. It's apparently owned by the same guy. Since 1939? He should be pushing up daisies by now. Our vampire? I asked. It's a possible lead, but what does he have to do with anything? Has he been seen anywhere? Not that I know of. I mean, this house is just now on our watch list. No one has been assigned to observe it yet. I fell silent. I think we may have found our person. We should focus on this house and office. And forget the other 2. That was a good point but some reason I thought that this was a right path. Yes. John, he started, then stopped, shaking his head. Well, you've been right since you've been with us. I guess we'll go with your thoughts on this one. Okay, we'll set up 2 cars at the house and 2 at the office. Should anyone go anywhere, 1 car will follow. I hope I'm right on this, but it feels right. Call it a hunch or an educated guess. Bob nodded finally. All right, I'll make the calls. You want to go out or stay here until we get something? I may as well stay here for now, I replied as I got up. Once we hear something, we'll move out. Bob nodded as he reached for his phone. I heard him speaking as I made my way to my office. I sat down and hoped I was right. I just sat for a while, then I decided to call up the report from Kentucky. I wanted to read for myself what had happened. It took a few moments for the information to come up. The report that opened was not the long-form, official report. That would be finalized over the next few days, but the basic report would contain what he wanted. It seemed that when he left, Tasha drove up to Lexington while she had the rest of her team back in the field and watch what happened. Once she returned, she had a bundle of dynamite, 7 sticks to be precise. Vincent had told her that 1 stick would be enough, but she told him to be quiet and had the team report back to the campsite. It took only a few minutes before the team heard the explosion. Running back, they discovered what was left of Tasha and that the pit had been totally destroyed. The only crystals left were the size of nickels. Vincent had made the side note that Tasha had done this on purpose because of her relationship with Ricky and had decided to join him in death rather than live without him. I leaned back in my chair and thought back to Tasha. Her attitude should have told me something was wrong, but then Ben's attitude had not been much better. Guess it didn't pay to get that attached to people you worked with. I sent Vincent a quick email saying how sorry I was for her death and a few other words of encouragement. Another couple of hours went by when Bob called me down. Our agent that was watching the house had called in and given a report. A man, identified as Clark Taylor, had left the house with a sizable paper sack, Bob read. He was followed to the Jameson building. He took the bag in with him. About 15 minutes later, he came out and went to a grocery store. The agent followed him in. He bought a lot of spinach, beef, and orange juice, enough for 5 or 6 people for the week, then went back to the pharmacy area and bought some iron pills. He then left and went home. How many people live in that house? Just Taylor, Bob replied. At least, he's the only one of the renter's agreement that's filed. A lot of food. I said, you say spinach and beef? That's what was reported. That mean anything? Yes, it may mean something. Beef and spinach are rich in iron. Plus, you said that he bought some iron pills. Iron is a main component in red blood cells. I got up and walked the room. I bet that this Taylor guy is a donor. He's buying iron-rich foods to keep up on the blood supply. Bob nodded. Could be. But that's not enough to get a search warrant or get us any kind of legal reason to enter and search his house. Maybe we should do a little visit to Mr. Black, I suggested. See what he's doing. Shake the tree and hope that the cat falls out. I nodded. You up to visit what might be the lion's den? Bob smiled broadly. The way he acted, I think that he had not been in the field or never worked with someone else. He stood, ready when you are. You packing? I asked as we walked down to the armory and garage. Always, Bob said with a smile. Good, I said as we continued walking. There's something I need to grab before we head off. Soon, we were off to the Jameson building. It was a tall office building, probably 30 stories. Nice building, looked fairly new. All parked in the parking lot. Bob pointed out our agents that were watching the building. We talked to them momentarily. Other than Taylor, no one has gone up to Black Exports. We told them that it was our intention to go up and confront Black. If we did not come back in an hour, call the team in. As we walked into the large bottom floor. Even though these was a greeter behind a large counter, we made our way to the office directory by the elevators. Black Exports was on the 20th floor, and it looked like it was half the entire floor. We went to the elevator and went up to floor 20. As we rose, I checked my pistol, and Bob, seeing me, checked his as well. The elevator doors opened in floor 20, and we stepped out. We looked around, and it did not take but a moment to determine which way to go. One hallway was plain, the other had short columns on either side of the hallway, each with a statue, sculpture, or a vase. We walked down what seemed like some short museum entry until we reached a dark brown door. Black Exports was in silver on the door. We entered and was greeted by a lady behind a desk. I reached in my pocket to get what I had grabbed before we left. I flipped a fake ID and badge with the FBI. I need to see Mr. Black now. The lady hesitated for a moment. He's on the telephone right now. You are John Smith. If you will have a seat, Mr. Smith, I'll tell him you are here when he gets off. I headed for the door. Sorry, but it's urgent. Despite her protests, I entered the office. It was fairly dark. The windows had heavy curtains blocking the light. There was a well-dressed man sitting behind a desk, a telephone in his hand. He looked up at us. Mata Rinraku, Suru Ni Jane. The man hung up his phone and stood up, motioning for his secretary that it was okay and to close the door. Mr. Black, I responded, I'm John Smith with the FBI. I flash on my badge. We need to talk. The man stepped out from behind his desk. He was tall, over 6 feet, about 40. He was dressed in a dark suit and pants, a dark red tie. I'm Philip Black, and you're not with the FBI. What? I stammered, lowering the fake badge and ID. No, the FBI. You are not one, he said with authority, nor the local police. You have their forwardness, but lack the attitude. Okay, I said, I'm not with the FBI, but I do know what you are. Aye, he replied, I'm Philip Black, exporter and importer of antiques and other such goods. Since 1939? He laughed a little. Been doing some background research, I see. Let me guess, you're with the MRE? Bob and I looked at each other. We both put our hands on the butt of the pistols. You know about the MRE? Black smiled, of course. Now, gentlemen, what do you want of me? Very well, down to the facts. I said, 2 of our agents have gone missing. We think you have something to do with their disappearance. I do not, he said quite plainly. Would Clark Taylor? Bob asked. Clark Taylor? He's one of my employees. He came by this morning. Yes, we know, I said, with a paper bag. Why, yes. He then turned away from us as though in thought. How long did you say your companions have been missing? As of today, for days, Bob answered. Black wandered about the room as he whispered quietly to himself. For days. He slowly walked around, then looked at a side door. I will be back, he said as he walked to the door and opened it. Bob looked at me. Should we follow? I was uncertain, but began to make my way toward the door. I heard the sound of another door opening, the slight suction of a refrigerator. There was a noise as if someone getting something out, the door closed, and then the sound of glass. I got closer to the door to look in and saw Black from the back. It looked as though he were drinking something. He quickly turned, a wine glass with a red liquid in it. I wanted to do this without you seeing, he said as he licked his lips. It is not very appealing, I'm afraid. However, he set the glass down, half empty. I think I may be able to help you. I backed out of the room. Black had been drinking blood. I knew it. He walked out and closed the door. Yes, I think I can help quite a bit. He walked over to a hat stand in the corner. It was so dark in the room that I had not noticed it. Black grabbed a wide-rimmed hat and put it on. Shall we go, gentlemen? He said, walking to the office door. He turned to his secretary as we left. Marjorie, I will be back in about 2 to 3 hours. Black led the way to the elevator. The doors opened. Gentlemen, all 3 of us entered. Black hit the lobby button. I must admit, I said, you are not like any vampire I have met before. Black smiled and laughed. I imagine not in your line of work. Not all of us are rampaging creatures of the night. Black put on some thin leather gloves. My job is legitimate, if you researched it. I sell and trade antiques. I was in the middle of a deal to Japan when you called, trying to get an acquisition of a samurai sword and armor for a customer. Make several thousand on the commission if everything goes through. The elevator door opened. We walked outside. I noticed that Black pulled his hat down low to help shade his face. I hope you realize what I'm putting up with in order to help you. Yes, I said, somewhat understanding. I just don't understand why. My own reasons. That's all you need know for now, he answered. I'll take my car. You have the address for Taylor's house? I looked at Bob, who nodded. Yes. Good. I'll meet you there. He quickly walked over to a dark gray Mercedes with tinted windows. I caught the attention of the two agents that we had talked to. I motioned to them to follow us. I hurriedly got into and headed in the direction that Black had gone. It was not long before we had the street full of cars. Black pulled into the driveway and motioned us to park beside him. We followed him out, letting him take the lead. It was quite apparent that he knew what he was doing. He swiftly walked to the door, produced a key, and unlocked the door. Entering a house without a warrant? Bob asked. I'm the owner, and I have a key, he said with authority. He opened the door and stepped inside. We followed. A thin man stepped up to bar the way, but Black removed his hat. The man's face registered fear when he recognized who it was that had entered. Masked was all he managed to say before Black grabbed his throat and lifted him one-handed against a wall. The man struggled at first, but quickly settled down 3 feet off the floor. Where? Black asked. Well, it wasn't so much of a question, but a growled demand. A woman appeared from one of the rooms and immediately dropped to her knees. Master, they are in a room on the 2nd floor. You will lead these men up to them. Again, it wasn't a question, but an order. She led us up the stairs without speaking. Opening a door, she motioned in. Bob and I entered, then stopped at the sight. The room had been stripped of furniture except for 4 single beds. On one was a woman, strapped down within 4 at her arm. 2 others had Kent and Larry, also strapped down and in 4 in their arms. In the opposite arm was a taped tube of some kind. They were all unconscious and looked very pale. There was a creak behind us, and Black was there. Call 911 and tell them you need 3 ambulances at 304 Beargart Road. If the police show up, and they will, refer all of this to Lieutenant Carter. He will take care of things if needed. I need to leave and will take this one and Taylor with me. I began to protest, but Black raised a hand to wait. Taylor would talk after a while, and he would say things that neither you nor I would care to come out. Trust me, I will take care of them. I felt that this Black knew what Bob. Come on, let's get these things out of them. Black stopped and turned. I suggest you let the medical people do that. And then he was gone. I followed him out, leaving Bob behind. Will I see you again about this? Black nodded. Count on it. He motioned for Taylor and the lady outside and to get into his car. He pulled out while I dialed 911. As I was waiting for an answer, I motioned for the agents to leave, leaving Bob and I alone. 4 days later, I was at the hospital talking with a pin-up tiger called Kent. Even though he was going to get out tomorrow, Larry had already checked out, and that ate at a very bored Kent. The woman that we found, Marjorie Nash, had died due to sepsis. Kent was recovering from it as well, although he was nowhere near as bad as she had been. Kent had told me that he and Larry had staked out Taylor's house, but was somehow spotted. They were both tossed into unconsciousness. They awoke strapped to bed, hooked up to an 4. Their blood was drained every other day. They were fed a blend of food, which they didn't care for but ate out of necessity. I had filled them in on what we had done and about Black helping. He had, more than once, praised me for the way we had found them. The news from Kentucky, however, did not sit well with him, but he assured me that there was little to do about that. It was starting to get late, and I was getting ready to leave for the day when a dark figure opened the door as he knocked. Removing his hat, I recognized Philip Black. He raised both hands in a surrender gesture as he walked in, as he noticed that I rested my hands on my pistol. "No need to get upset," he said deeply. "I only wish to convey my remorse for what has happened." He closed the door and stepped inside. "I feel like you deserve an explanation." Kent nodded. "Okay, go ahead." "First, Mr. Taylor is dead. He was found 3 days ago by the police. Accidental heroin overdose. That explains the marks on his arm." Black smiled slightly, but without humor. He was too much of a risk. Apparently, it all began when Taylor went, let's say, egotistical in his position. He was a donor, as you may have guessed, and ran a donor house. "I have 3, each with 4 to 5 people." He then quickly added, "willing people. I supply the houses, pay the bills, pay each quite well." But something happened to Taylor. He became arrogant, overbearing, and violent. He ran off 2 other donors, savagely beat a 3rd to death. The woman that you found was too scared to leave. With 3 donors gone, Taylor was desperate to find replacements. The woman was a jogger that just happened by. Once he grabbed her, he started to get paranoid. When he noticed you 2 across the road, he instantly thought you were the police. He thought someone may have seen him grab the girl and were watching him. He snuck around a full 2 blocks before sneaking up and tossing you and the other. He dragged you in, strapped you down, and started to bleed you and the others. He gave a slight smile. "That's how I knew something was up when you mentioned that your companions were missing and that Taylor may be involved." "How so?" I asked, interested in his story. "Well, at first, the flavor of the blood was different. I did not think much of it as a change in diet can cause a change, but then 3 different sources had different flavors. And when you came in, I double checked the blood that Taylor had brought me that day. Same but slightly less different. It was though the first batch was completely different, but was slowly becoming what I was used to." "So, you thought something was up because the blood had a different taste." I started. "Amazing." Black smiled. "Not really." "And what about this Lieutenant Carter?" I asked. "When the ambulances showed up, so did the police. When I told them to contact Lieutenant Carter, he came out and cleared things up for us." "Lieutenant William Carter?" Kent asked. "Yes," Black responded. "I know him quite well. He is familiar with the MRE and what we do." Kent replied. "He would take care of things." He turned to Black. "Good call, thank you. I'm afraid I have yet to fill in John here on everything and everyone that we work with." Black bowed slightly. "Are there any other details that I can tell you about?" Kent shook his head that he did not. What Black said pretty much answered all of my questions. There was not much we could do anyway. He had killed Taylor, but what was the point of having him arrested for it? He would be jailed, proven to be a vampire, and then we would have a lot of explaining to do. Of that I personally felt any kind of loss with a man such as he. Black nodded to both of us and prepared to open the door when I spoke up. "Did you close the deal on the Japanese front?" Black nodded with a smile. "Made $30,000 off the deal. Then he left." Kent and I were alone. Philip Black had impressed me, even though he was a vampire. Kent must have picked up on what I was thinking. "I did tell you that not all vampires are blood-hunting monsters looking to tear your throat out. I am surprised that he was so easy for you to find." "Just like I suppose. All I had to do was get IRS information." I responded. "He did not even change his name. He should have, if he was smart, so that the information would show 2 or 3 others owning the company." "Perhaps it was done on purpose," Kent replied, "to show that he was not hiding." I thought could be. I looked at the time. I'd better head off. I have a lot to add to the mission report tomorrow. Give me a call at the office, and I'll come by and pick you up. Kent shook his head. Already have Larry doing that. You did a good job, John. You and Bob. He's a year out being an agent, but has not really been on too many missions. I'm glad he was able to help. He was fine. I had wondered about why he acted so glad to take on a mission. I guess he is just one of those agents that gets bypassed for everything. Kent said, we'll have to change that. And I may have something for you when I get back. You just get better, I said. The doctor said that you should have a few days off before returning to work. Kent smiled somewhat. Just what I need, a vacation.